Prophet Abraham, known in sacred scriptures as Abram and later Abraham, meaning father of many nations, stands as one of the greatest and most revered figures in human history. He is honored by billions across Judaism, Christianity, and Islam as the founding patriarch of monotheism, the man who shattered idols in an age ruled by them, and the soul who walked away from empire, family, and comfort in pursuit of the one invisible God. His life is not only a personal journey of faith and obedience, but a universal blueprint for surrender to the divine. Abraham's story is ancient, yet timeless, deeply rooted in the dust of Mesopotamia, and yet eternally alive in the prayers and hearts of those who seek truth. He is often described as the friend of God, a title not given lightly in any faith. The weight of this friendship was not born through ease, but through trial, through fire, famine, exile, and the command to sacrifice what was dearest to him. His legacy shaped nations, and his covenant echoes through prophets, kings, and scriptures that came long after him. In a world gripped by idolatry and empire, Abraham emerged not as a warrior or ruler, but as a solitary voice of divine allegiance, called to bear the flame of faith into generations of darkness. Abraham's rise was not marked by miracles that astonished crowds, or by royal lineage that paved his path. His greatness lay in his unwavering resolve to follow truth, no matter the cost. He was a seeker from youth, a man who looked upon stars, sun and moon, not to worship them, but to question them, to reach beyond the veil of nature to the Creator behind all things. In an age where kings claimed divinity and temples echoed with false prayers, Abraham broke the silence with a truth few dared to utter. There is only one God, and he is above all creation. From the idol-forging household of his father to the courts of King Nimrod, Abraham's message struck at the roots of power and pride. He challenged his people not merely with speech, but with action. He shattered the idols of yore. He walked through fire. He abandoned his homeland, trusting in a God he could not see, but who had spoken to his heart. He became a wanderer, a prophet, a patriarch, and a nation unto himself. His story crosses borders and centuries. He is the forefather of the children of Israel, through his son Isaac, and the ancestor of the Arabs, through Ishmael. He laid the foundations of the sacred Kaaba in Makkah, and received the promise of generations who would follow the path of righteousness. His faith was not academic, it was tested, and in each test, he rose willing to sacrifice his son, willing to walk into the unknown, willing to stand alone when all others bowed to falsehood. To study Abraham is to witness the unfolding of divine covenant, the binding of heaven and earth through obedience and trust. He is not simply a prophet among prophets. He is the root from which prophetic truth branches out across the world. His name is recited in daily prayers, his legacy honored in rituals, and his trials remembered in sacred scripture. Yet beyond all this, Abraham remains the man who heard a voice in the silence, left behind all he knew, and became the father of nations. In this biography, we trace the life of Abraham from his birth in the shadow of idols to his ascent as the bearer of God's promise. Through 10 unfolding sections, we will walk with him through fire and famine, through valleys of doubt and mountaintops of revelation. We will see the young seeker, the fearless reformer, the devoted father, and the elder prophet whose death marked the fulfillment of a life truly lived in surrender. This is the story of a man whose faith moved history. This is the journey of Abraham, the friend of God. Birth and early Eliezer, birth of Abraham, called Abram in his earliest days, was not merely the arrival of a child, but the ignition of a divine plan that would alter the spiritual direction of all nations. He was born in Ur of the Chaldeans, a powerful city in southern Mesopotamia, surrounded by towering temples, ziggurats, and shrines dedicated to idols, stars, and celestial gods. His father, Terah, was a respected figure in the city, a craftsman and merchant of idols, a man fully entrenched in the religious culture of his time. Yet from the very household that served false gods, the Creator would raise a man to destroy them. According to oral traditions preserved in both Islamic and Jewish texts, signs surrounded his birth. Some said the stars that men worshipped flickered with unrest at his arrival. Others whispered that a child had been born who would challenge the gods of men. Nimrod, the mighty king of the region, was warned by seers and priests that a child would soon be born who would rise against his order, calling for the worship of one unseen god. Fearful of rebellion, Nimrod reportedly ordered the execution of newborns, a decree that echoes in the pattern of tyrants threatened by divine truth. Terah, unaware of the full destiny of his son, either concealed Abraham's birth or moved to a place of safety to protect him. In his earliest years, Abraham grew under the watchful eye of a father who carved idols from stone and wood with his own hands. The child watched in silence as these lifeless statues were polished, painted, and sold to worshippers. He saw them lifted onto shelves, bowed to in prayer, and feared as gods. But even as a boy, his heart rejected what his eyes beheld. He was curious, thoughtful, and remarkably intelligent. Abraham did not accept what was handed down blindly. As he grew, he began to ask questions, dangerous questions. Why do these gods not speak? Why do they fall when touched? Why do we worship what we ourselves have built? These words were not welcome in a city where idols were wealth, tradition, and power. But Abraham was not silenced by fear. Even as a youth, he spoke boldly in his household, questioning his father and debating the worshippers who came to buy their gods. He would gaze at the stars at night, watching their brilliance and pondering their movements. For a brief time, he wondered if perhaps the stars were divine, but when they disappeared from the sky, he turned away. He saw the moon rise in majesty and thought, "Could this be my Lord?" But it too vanished. Then came the sun, brilliant and radiant, but like all else, it too set. And Abraham declared, "I do not love those that set." This moment, captured in ancient scripture, marked the turning point in his awakening, the realization that the Creator could not be bound by the cycles of creation. The true God must be eternal, unseen. And above all things, his early life was one of inner rebellion against outer traditions. He was surrounded by priests, astrologers, sorcerers, and merchants of falsehood, but his soul remained untouched. He sought solitude to reflect. He walked in the deserts and climbed hills to gaze into the heavens. He longed for truth, not from men, but from the one who had made the stars and skies. His was a heart prepared by providence, a flame kept hidden until the appointed time. Though still young, Abraham's rejection of idolatry became public. He confronted his father, urging him to abandon the idols. "Do you take idols for gods?" he asked. "They can neither hear nor see nor help you in the least." Terah, torn between his love for his son and his loyalty to tradition, could not accept the rebuke. Their household became a place of tensional love and truth colliding, in silence and argument. But Abraham would not be silenced. He began to speak in the marketplaces. He debated the priests. He challenged those who bowed to wood and stone. He became known as the youth who mocks the gods. Some feared him, others mocked him. A few listened, but none could deny his sincerity or the strength of his argument. In a world where the powerful bowed to lifeless statues, Abraham stood alone, unafraid. His youth was not marked by miracles or angelic appearances, but by unwavering clarity. Where others saw tradition, he saw deception. Where others saw gods, he saw tools. Where others submitted, he questioned. This was the divine preparation. Before a man could be chosen to father prophets and nations, he had to be unshaken by kings and customs. In the shadows of ziggurats and under the light of stars, Abraham's early years were spent in search of the unseen God, and the one he sought was about to answer him not with whispers in the wind, but with a call that would resound through the corridors of time. The world at that time, the world into which Abraham was born, was vast, ancient, and spiritually fractured. Human civilization had advanced in remarkable ways since the time of Noah, spreading into cities and kingdoms that stretched across Mesopotamia, Egypt, and the Levant. Yet, despite their towering temples, complex societies, and growing empires, mankind had once again drifted far from the truth. The descendants of Noah had multiplied, but so too had their errors. In place of the one true Creator, they had crafted gods of stone, with imagination building entire systems of worship upon deception and fear. In Mesopotamia, the cradle of civilization, Abraham's native land of Ur of the Chaldeans stood as a beacon of political and technological advancement. Towering ziggurats rose into the sky, massive temples dominated city life, and priesthoods governed the flow of power. Astrology and idol worship were at the heart of society. The stars were charted not merely for navigation or agriculture, but to divine the future. Statues of celestial deities filled homes and marketplaces, and human beings bowed to the very objects their hands had carved. The king was seen not only as a ruler, but often as divine himself, a mediator between the gods and the people. Nimrod, believed by many traditions to be the tyrant king of the age, ruled with an iron grip over much of Mesopotamia. A builder of cities and towers, he fostered pride and rebellion against the Most High. The Tower of Babel, a monument to human arrogance, still loomed in collective memory, and the confusion of tongues it birthed had left nations scattered and suspicious. Unity had given way to empire building, not for the glory of God, but for the name of man. In Egypt, powerful dynasties reigned, adorned in gold and crowned with divine titles. Pharaohs were worshipped as gods on earth, and polytheism flourished with entire pantheons dedicated to the sun, river, and underworld. The Nile's fertility brought abundance, but it also fed the illusion that man could master the elements without accountability to the Creator. The people traded in grain, bronze, and rituals, but not in truth. The Canaanite regions, which Abraham would later pass through, were steeped in idol worship and child sacrifice. The gods Baal and Molech demanded offerings that defied mercy and conscience. Fertility cults, temple prostitution, and sorcery were common. Cities like Sodom and Gomorrah, known for their wealth and indulgence, were spiritual wastelands beneath the surface of their prosperity. Across much of the ancient world, sacred knowledge had become myth. Divine commandments had been replaced with superstition, and revelation was replaced by ritual. The memory of Noah and his ark was fading into legend, distorted by generations that did not want to remember the consequences of rebellion. The sons of Shem, Ham, and Japheth had spread far and wide, but with each generation came greater spiritual amnesia. Amid this moral darkness, religion was no longer a path to truth, but a tool of manipulation. The poor were taxed in the name of the gods, the oppressed were told that fate had cursed them, and kings surrounded themselves with prophets for hire, who spoke only what power wished to hear. The spiritual elite grew rich on the offerings of the desperate, while the voices of sincere worship were drowned in chants to lifeless idols. Into this world of confusion and corruption, the Creator chose a man not from among priests or kings, but a youth whose heart burned for the truth. Abraham was born not into a humble nomadic tribe, but into the very heart of this idolatrous machine, a city that bowed to stars, a family that crafted idols. And yet, even as a child, his soul recoiled from what his eyes saw. The world at that time was veiled in falsehood, but the heavens would soon open to one who dared to question everything he had been taught. The spiritual landscape was barren. Humanity was ripe for a revolution of the soul. And into that desolate terrain walked Abraham, a man who would not just wander through nations but change them, not with sword or crown, but with faith and fire. Signs of prophethood. From his youth, Abraham bore signs not seen in other men. He questioned what others feared, and where they bowed, he stood tall. While boys of yore were taught to pray to the sun and offer gifts to carved stones, the young son of Terah asked, "Why should my hands worship what my hands have made?" His soul refused the chains of tradition. Dreams visited him vivid, full of light and truth, while others slept in darkness. He pondered the stars, but not as gods. He saw the moon vanish and said, "This cannot be my Lord." When the sun rose, mighty and blazing, then set, he knew, "I turn my face to him who made the heavens and the earth." His heart was drawn, not to created things, but to the unseen Creator beyond them. Even before revelation, wisdom poured from him. He spoke with clarity beyond his years. Elders were confounded by his questions. His tongue was honest, yet fearless. He never lied, never bowed to idols, and never sought favor from the rulers. His eyes held fire when injustice stood near, and mercy when truth was honored. These were not signs of ambition, but of a soul being shaped for a divine mission. The call to prophethood. The call came not with thunder, nor with fire, but in the stillness of a soul already searching. Abraham had long walked apart from the people of Ur. Though he lived among them, he was not of them. Their idols filled the streets. Their altars burned with vain offerings. Yet within Abraham stirred a fire not of wood nor stone, but of truth. One night, as he lay beneath the sky, watching the endless stars pierce the blackness above, he heard within him a voice not of men, not of dreams, but from the one who had made the stars themselves. It said, "Submit, turn to me alone. I am thy Lord." Abraham knew then that his search had found its end. The Lord of the heavens and earth had chosen him, not merely to know, but to speak, not only to believe, but to lead. He rose from the ground that night, no longer a seeker, but a servant, a prophet, bearing a trust for all generations. With the dawn, his mission began. He first turned to his father Terah, the craftsman of idols. With tenderness and fire in his voice, he said, "O my father, why worship what neither sees nor hears? Why follow what cannot guide? The truth has come to me. Follow me, and I will guide thee to the straight path." But Terah, bound by pride and the chains of his trade, rebuked his son. "Cease, or I shall stone thee. Leave me." Abraham's heart broke, but he replied, "Peace be upon thee. I shall seek forgiveness for thee." Then he turned to his people. They gathered for their festival, rejoicing around their gods, dancing and feasting by the riverside. Abraham stayed behind. When they were gone, he entered their great temple. One by one, he struck down their idols with an axe, leaving only the largest untouched. To it he hung the axe and walked away. When the people returned and saw their gods shattered, they cried out, "Who has done this?" Some said, "It was Abraham, we heard him speak against them." They brought him forth and questioned him. He pointed to the untouched idol. "Ask him, if he speaks." They were silent, for they knew it was no god. In fury, they said, "Burn him, let fire consume him." They built a great pit and filled it with flame. They cast Abraham into it, but the fire betrayed its makers. The Lord of Abraham spoke to the flame, "Be cool and safe for Abraham." The fire obeyed, and Abraham stood within it unharmed, while the people looked on in awe and terror. Thus did the Lord defend his prophet, and from that day Abraham's name was spoken with fear by some, with reverence by others. After the fire, Abraham departed. The city of Ur could no longer hold him. He was commanded to journey, and he obeyed. With his nephew Lot and his wife Sarah, he walked across the lands, from Mesopotamia to Canaan. The Lord guided him from place to place, and wherever he went, he built altars and proclaimed the oneness of God. In Egypt, Abraham faced Pharaoh. His wisdom spared him from harm, and his dignity shone even in the presence of kings. In Canaan, he lived among strangers, yet never ceased to preach truth. The Lord tested him with wealth, with journey, with separation, and with time. Then came the promise of a son. When Abraham had grown old, and Sarah beyond childbearing, an angelic host brought him news of Isaac. He laughed in wonder yet believed. And before Isaac, another had been born, Ishmael, from Hagar the handmaiden. Both sons were blessings, but both carried the weight of destiny. One day, Abraham was commanded in a vision, "Slay thy son." Without question, he obeyed. He took Ishmael to the mountain, laid him down, and raised the blade. At the final moment, the Lord called out, "O Abraham, thou hast fulfilled the vision." A ram was sent in place of the boy. Abraham had passed the test, and his name was sealed among the faithful. Years later, Abraham was commanded again to build a house. He and Ishmael raised the foundations of the Kaaba in the barren valley of Bakaver. There, the sanctuary of monotheism was established, and Abraham prayed, "O Lord, make this a safe land. Send among them a messenger from their own missions, spread through his sons." Isaac would be the father of Jacob, and Jacob of the 12 tribes. Ishmael's line would continue through centuries to Muhammad. Abraham became not merely a prophet, but the father of prophets. In all lands, to all people, his name was honored. He bore the title Friend of God. Teachings and message. The message of Abraham, son of Terah, was not bound by walls, temples, or tongues. It was a call as ancient as the stars and as urgent as the rising sun. Worship the one true God, and none beside him. Abraham did not bring a new faith, but restored the ancient truth that the Creator is one, without image, equal, or partner. He spoke not in riddles or rituals, but in clarity. His words pierced hearts like light through darkness. The Lord of the heavens and the earth is He, who gives life and causes death. He is nearer than the breath, yet above all the heavens. He sees, He hears, He knows, and He alone is worthy of worship. To His people, who carved gods from stone, gold, and clay, Abraham taught that creation cannot be the Creator. He questioned their idols, not to mock, but to awaken. Do they speak? Do they hear thee? Do they harm or benefit thee? He urged them to use reason. He invited them to reflect upon the stars, the moon, and the sun, not to worship them, but to witness the signs of the unseen Lord who governs all. When the lights of the heavens faded, Abraham declared, I turn my face to him who created the heavens and the earth, upright, and I am not of those who associate others with him. Monotheism was the heart of his message, but Abraham's teachings reached beyond belief into action. He taught justice, that no soul bears the burden of another, and that every man will answer for his own deeds. He taught kindness, that the guest is to be honored, the stranger not turned away, and the servant treated as a brother. He taught humility, that the earth is not ours to boast upon, and wealth is not ours to hoard, but a trust from the Most High. He taught obedience, not blind to man, but conscious to God, even when the command was to sacrifice his beloved son. Abraham abandoned it with hesitation, but with surrender. He taught hope, that even in old age, miracles may descend. Even in deserts, water may spring, and even in loneliness, one man with God is never alone. Abraham's teachings were not bound by scroll or sword. His message crossed lands and generations. 2 kings and peasants alike, proclaimed under trees, beside altars, and atop hills. He spoke to pharaohs, 2 shepherds, and 2 angels who came as men. He lived the truth, he preached. When tested with fire, he walked into it. When tested with famine, he shared what little he had. When tested with delay, he waited without doubt. His prayers were teachings in themselves. O Lord, grant me righteous offspring. O Lord, make me one who establishes prayer. O Lord, forgive me, my parents, and the believers on the day of judgment. He left behind no scroll, but his life became scripture. His path became the pattern for prophets. His surrender became the definition of faith. Jews call him Abraham Avinu, Abraham our father. Christians revere him as the father of faith. Muslims call him Ibrahim al-Halal, Abraham the friend of God. All traced their spiritual lineage to him. His message was pure, universal, and timeless. Serve God, shun false gods, live righteously, trust the unseen, walk humbly, obey, even when the path is steep. Thus was the voice of Abraham, not faded with time, but echoed by every prophet after him. Challenges and opposition. From the moment Abraham spoke against idols, his life turned into a storm of trials. He was a lone voice in a nation of silence. Raised in Ur of the Chaldeans, a land glittering with temples, ruled by astrologers, and blinded by the worship of stars and statues. His father, Terah, was a maker of idols. His family lived by what he condemned. His first enemy was not a stranger, but his own blood. Father, he said gently, why dost thou worship that which neither hears nor sees, nor can avail thee? But love could not move a heart hardened by tradition. Terah rebuked him. The household grew cold. The son who questioned gods carved by man became an outcast in his own home, in the public square. Abraham smashed the idols in their sacred temple except one. When the people demanded to know who had done this, he pointed to the largest idol and said, "Ask him if he can speak." His words were a mirror held to their conscience. But instead of truth, they chose fury. The king, Nimrod, heard of this. Young rebel, a man who claimed a god greater than fire, stars, and kings, was a threat. Abraham was brought before the throne. Nimrod challenged him, "Who is your Lord?" Abraham replied, "My Lord is he who gives life and causes death." Nimrod, in arrogance, brought 2 prisoners. He ordered one to be killed, and the other set free to give life and death. But Abraham did not flinch. "Then bring the sun from the west," he said, "if thou be mighty." The court was silenced. Yet again, truth was answered not with reason, but wrath. So they built a fire, the likes of which had never been seen. It roared like a beast, and Abraham was cast into it. The crowd watched. The flames rose, but the fire turned cool, for God had commanded, "O fire, be coolness and safety upon Abraham." He walked out untouched. His chains burned away, but his soul unshaken. This was only the beginning. He was driven from his homeland, wandered foreign lands, and lived as a stranger among tribes and kings. He faced hunger, suspicion, and danger. Yet he never raised a sword. His weapon was truth. His armor was faith. He stood before pharaohs who desired his wife. He faced kings who feared his presence. He built altars where none believed. And he waited long into old age for a son. But even when his prayers were answered and Ishmael was born, the command came to leave him and Hagar in the barren desert of Baca. Abraham did not question. He left them with only a pouch of water, and the words, "God will provide." Then came the final test of vision to sacrifice his son. Abraham trembled not. Ishmael submitted without protest. Father and son walked to the mount, the knife raised until God intervened. Thou hast fulfilled the vision. He had passed every trial, yet his life remained a road of solitude. He was mocked by idolaters, tested by tyrants, separated from his kin, and exiled from comfort. But he never turned back. Even when he built the sacred house, the Kaaba, with his bare hands under the blazing sun, only a few believed. But he built not for numbers, he built for truth. Abraham's opposition did not come only from people, came from within. The test of loneliness, of delay, of surrender. But in every moment, he chose the Creator over comfort, command over desire, obedience over doubt. He became the father of the faithful, not because he conquered armies, but because he conquered himself. In every challenge, Abraham stood unmoved like a mountain under storm, because his trust was not in idols or men, but in the unseen hand of God. Legacy and impact. The legacy of Abraham stands not in ruins or relics, but in living hearts across nations. He left behind no crown, no empire, and no worldly monument. Yet his name echoes in the prayers of billions. The faith he kindled became the fire that lit the path for prophets to come. His story was not confined to one tribe, it spread across tongues and time. Crossing deserts and oceans, he became the father of nations, not by blood alone, but by belief. To the children of Israel, he is Abraham Avinu, Abraham our father. The covenant of circumcision, the promise of the land, the lineage of prophets all trace their roots to him. The Torah remembers him as a man of hospitality, justice, and unwavering faith. To Christians, he is the patriarch of faith. Paul calls him the one who believed God, and it was counted unto him for righteousness. His willingness to sacrifice, his trust in divine promise, his walk without knowing the destination, these are the cornerstones of Christian belief. To Muslims, he is Ibrahim al-Khalil, Abraham the friend of God, the father of Ishmael, the builder of the Kaaba, the one whose devotion marked the rites of Hajj. Every Muslim prayer invokes blessings upon him, and every pilgrim retraces the path he walked with Hagar and Ishmael in the barren valley of Makkah. To humanity, he is the man who stood alone and became a nation. His impact is woven into rituals, scriptures, and sacred lands. He stood at the crossroads of civilization between Mesopotamia, Canaan, and Arabia, and left a mark that time could not erase. The cities he visited, the wells he dug, the altars he raised, they became milestones of prophetic memory. But more than the places he touched, it was the principle he lived that endured. Faith is not blind, it is trust in the unseen. When all else fades, sacrifice is not lost, is offering your best for the sake of the highest. Legacy is not wealth, it is obedience written across generations. His descendants were not only by blood, but by creed, those who submit to the truth as he did, those who say God is one when the world bows to many. His impact cannot be measured in numbers, but in the trembling of hearts that hear his name and remember submission. Even the last prophet, Muhammad, was commanded to follow the pure way of Abraham, follow the religion of Abraham, who was upright, and not of the idolaters. In every era of doubt, every time the world forgets, the name Abraham rises again, not as a relic of the past, but as a call to return. His life proves that one man, alone with God, can reshape the course of history. His legacy lives on, not in stone, but in faith that moves mountains. Death and burial. The final years of Abraham's life were lived in peace, surrounded by the echoes of fulfilled promises. He had walked with the Creator, witnessed miracles, endured tests, and seen the birth of nations through his sons. With age came not only wisdom, but serenity, a quiet understanding that his journey on earth was drawing to a close. There was no grand farewell, no kingdom left behind, no throne passed on. Abraham's inheritance was spiritual. His final breaths were not a cry of regret, but a whisper of contentment. A man who had fulfilled his covenant with God. He passed away at a great age, 175 years. According to the scriptures, an old man, full of days, content with the life he had lived. His heart bore no pride, only gratitude. His soul, weary from the trials of life, departed gently, returning to the Lord, who once called him from Ur, to walk into the unknown. Isaac and Ishmael, sons long separated by distance and destiny, stood together at his burial. The two brothers, united in grief, laid their father to rest in the cave of Machpelah, near Hebrana field, Abraham had once purchased from the Hittites to bury his beloved wife, Sarah. It was there, in that sacred ground, that the father of faith was buried beside Herthaman, who had challenged kings, broken idols, and raised altars in distant lands. The tomb became more than a resting place. It became a symbol of unshaken belief, of a man who left behind everything for the sake of the unseen. That burial site, known today as the Sanctuary of Abraham, remains one of the most revered places on earth, visited by Jews, Christians, and Muslims alike. Generations walked the path he once walked, whispering prayers, remembering the man who bowed to no one but God. His grave is not adorned with gold or guarded by marble thrones. It rests in the earth he once wandered, quiet, unassuming, yet more honored than the tombs of kings. For Abraham did not live for the world. He lived for the one who made it, and in death, as in life, he remained upright, a man at peace with his Creator. Interfaith perspective. Few figures in human history stand at the crossroads of faith as prominently as Abraham. Revered across Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, he is the common root of the monotheistic tradition, a spiritual patriarch whose legacy bridges centuries and continents. Though the names for God may differ, and the scriptures diverge in detail, the image of Abraham remains unified, a man of unwavering faith who obeyed the call of the unseen. In Judaism, he is Avraham Avinu Abraham, our father, the first of the patriarchs, and the founder of the Hebrew people. His covenant with God, sealed through circumcision and the promise of land and descendants, forms the very foundation of Jewish identity. The binding of Isaac, known as the Akedah, is viewed as the ultimate test of faith, proving Abraham's trust in God's will. In Christianity, Abraham is honored as the father of all who believe. The New Testament portrays him as the model of faith, praised by Paul in his letters and remembered in the book of Hebrews as a man who obeyed even when he did not see the full picture. Christians see in Abraham the prototype of salvation through faith rather than law, making him an eternal witness to the righteousness that comes through trust in God's promises. In Islam, he is Ibrahim, the Hanif, the upright one. He is known for destroying idols, debating kings, and submitting wholly to the will of Allah. His story is told with reverence in the Quran, where he is seen as a prophet, a messenger, and a leader to be followed. Muslims trace their spiritual lineage through his son Ishmael, and every year during the Hajj pilgrimage, millions of believers walk in the footsteps of Abraham and his family, honoring their devotion and sacrifice. Beyond the Abrahamic faiths, his image surfaces in broader philosophical and theological thought as the archetype of spiritual obedience, the seeker of divine truth, and the man who left behind the familiar to embrace the eternal. Interfaith dialogue often begins with Abraham. He is not a point of division but a doorway to mutual recognition. His tent was open, his heart was generous, and his journey was toward the same transcendent truth that all sincere souls seek. In a world divided by borders and beliefs, Abraham's life remains a reminder that faith can unify what fear often separates. He did not belong to one people, one land, or one era. He belonged to the voice that called from beyond, and to the answer that still echoes in the hearts of all who dare to say, "Here I am."